Jiho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped out of the formal meeting hall. 3 hours of diplomatic talks with the Velthari had left him exhausted. The alien delegates spoke in careful, measured tones about trade agreements and territorial boundaries. Everything felt so stiff and official. He was heading back to the Aurora when a gentle tug on his sleeve made him turn around. A small alien stood beside him, barely reaching his waist. She had 6 arms, each one moving with surprising grace, and her silver skin gleamed under the twin suns of this strange world. Unlike the formal delegates inside, she wore simple cloth wrappings and had kind eyes that seemed to sparkle with mischief. "Human Jiho," she said in surprisingly clear Korean, though her accent made it sound musical. "I am Nala. Would you like to see a real Velthari home?" Jiho's communication device buzzed immediately. Captain Lee's voice crackled through, "Kim, stick to the planned route, no unauthorized contact with locals." The standard protocol was clear: avoid unnecessary interaction that might complicate diplomatic relations. But something about Nala's invitation felt different. She wasn't asking for state secrets or trying to sell him anything. She just looked lonely, the way his own grandmother used to look when she hoped someone would stay for dinner. "I would be honored," Jiho found himself saying, switching off his comm device before Captain Lee could object. Nala's face lit up with genuine joy. She led him down a winding path away from the gleaming government buildings. Her home sat nestled between 2 large trees that looked almost like Earth's oak trees, except their leaves shimmered with an otherworldly blue tint. The moment Jiho stepped through her doorway, he stopped breathing for a second. The smell hit him like a warm hug from his childhood. It was impossible, but somehow this alien kitchen smelled exactly like his grandmother's house in Busan. The air carried hints of cinnamon, something sweet and buttery, and that indefinable scent of a place where love lived in every corner. Nala noticed his expression and smiled knowingly. "Smell travels between worlds more easily than people think," she said, bustling around her kitchen with 4 arms, while the other 2 gestured for him to sit. The furniture was clearly made for someone much smaller than him, but Nala quickly adjusted a cushioned stool to the right height. Jiho settled down, watching in fascination as she moved around the small space. Her kitchen looked nothing like a human one. The stove seemed to work by singing to it, and the cabinets opened at her touch like flower petals, but somehow it felt more like home than his sterile quarters aboard the Aurora. "You are far from your nest," Nala observed, pulling out ingredients that looked completely alien yet somehow familiar. "Young ones who travel the star roads often carry heavy hearts." Jiho found himself nodding. 6 months in space, even with the best crew in the fleet, could make anyone homesick. "How did you know?" "The same way I know you are kind," she replied simply. "Your eyes tell stories, just like the recipes my grandmother taught me tell stories." She paused, looking directly at him. "Would you like to hear one?" Nala hummed a soft melody as she worked, her 6 arms moving in perfect harmony. 2 arms measured out flour that shimmered with a deep purple color, while another pair cracked what looked like crystal eggs into a bowl. The remaining arms kneaded and stirred with the practiced ease of someone who had been cooking for centuries. Jiho watched, mesmerized. The ingredients looked nothing like anything from Earth, yet the way Nala worked reminded him so much of his grandmother's Sunday morning routines. The same careful attention to detail, the same love poured into every movement. "This flour comes from the singing grains that grow in our northern valleys," Nala explained, holding up a handful of the purple powder. "And these crystalline pods hold the sweetness of our 3 moons." She cracked another crystal egg, and golden liquid flowed out like liquid sunshine. The impossible part wasn't just the alien ingredients, it was how right everything felt. When Nala added what looked like tiny star fragments to the mix, Jiho could swear he smelled honey and sesame oil. When she sprinkled in dried leaves that glowed faintly blue, the entire kitchen filled with the warm scent of cinnamon and ginger. "How is that possible?" Jiho asked, leaning forward on his small stool. "Those ingredients don't exist on Earth, but I can smell home," Nala finished for him, her eyes twinkling. "The language of comfort food speaks across all worlds, young traveler. Our hearts recognize what feeds the soul, even when wrapped in unfamiliar forms. She shaped the dough into small rounds and placed them on a cooking stone that glowed with gentle heat. As they baked, the impossible sense grew stronger. Jiho closed his eyes, and for a moment he was 8 years old again, sitting in his grandmother's tiny kitchen in Busan, watching her make yakwa for the harvest festival. "Try one," Nala said softly, placing a golden brown cookie in his palm. Jiho took a careful bite, then froze. His eyes flew open in shock. It tasted exactly like his grandmother's yakwa. The perfect balance of sweet and nutty, the delicate crunch giving way to chewy center, even the subtle hint of ginger that grandmother always added when she thought no one was looking. "This is impossible," he whispered, staring at the cookie. "This tastes like my childhood, but how? You've never been to Earth, you've never tasted human food." Nala settled into her own chair, which adjusted its height automatically to accommodate her smaller frame. "I have tasted the food of 1,000 worlds, child, not with my mouth, but with something deeper." She touched her chest with one delicate hand. "Comfort, love, the warmth of being cared for. These flavors exist everywhere life grows. They just wear different clothes." Jiho took another bite, his mind reeling. "But the taste is identical, not similar, identical. Because the feeling behind it is identical," Nala said gently. "Your grandmother made these with love for a child far from home. I make them with love for a traveler far from his nest. The universe recognizes this pattern and responds accordingly." She leaned forward, her ancient eyes suddenly serious. "This is just the beginning, Jiho Kim. If a simple cookie can bridge the gap between worlds, imagine what deeper connections might be possible. What I offer your species goes far beyond recipes and flavors." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Are you ready to hear about gifts that could change everything?" Jiho set down his half-eaten cookie, his hands trembling slightly. "What do you mean, gifts that could change everything?" Nala's expression grew thoughtful as she studied his face. "Tell me, young one, what did you feel when you first tasted my cookies?" "Surprised," Jiho admitted. "Confused, but also—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Grateful, happy, like I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for." "And did you run away? Did you throw the cookie down and declare it impossible?" Jiho shook his head. "No. I wanted to understand how it worked." "Exactly." Nala's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Most beings, when faced with something that challenges their understanding of reality, react with fear or anger. They reject what doesn't fit their worldview. But you embraced the mystery. You sought understanding, rather than demanding simple answers. She stood up, her movements suddenly more purposeful. Walking to what looked like a simple wooden cabinet, she pressed her palm against its surface. The wood shimmered and transformed, revealing a complex crystalline structure filled with swirling lights. The cookies were a test, Jiho Kim, not of your taste buds, but of your spirit. Jiho stared at the impossible transformation. "A test for what?" "To see if your species is ready for what I really am." Nala's form began to change subtly. She grew slightly taller, and her skin took on a deeper luminescence, but her eyes remained kind, still holding that grandmotherly warmth. "I am what my people call a keeper, one of the last guardians of something called the Great Archive." "What's the Great Archive?" Nala gestured to the crystalline structure, which now pulsed with patterns of light that seemed almost alive. "Imagine every important discovery, every breakthrough, every moment of wisdom from millions of years of galactic history, the rise and fall of countless civilizations, technologies that could reshape reality itself, all of it preserved, catalogued, waiting." Jiho's mind reeled. That's impossible. Nothing could store that much information." "Your scientists would call it impossible, yes, but impossibility is just another word for something not yet understood." Nala touched the crystal gently, and images began to flicker within its depths. Cities floating in space, beings of pure energy, machines that looked like living art. "For 3,000 years, I have been searching the galaxy for a species with the right qualities to inherit this knowledge." "What qualities?" "Most races, when they reach the stars, become one of two things. Either they grow cold and calculating, losing their compassion in the pursuit of efficiency, or they become so overwhelmed by the vastness of space that they retreat into isolation, paralyzed by their own insignificance. Nala turned back to face him, her expression serious but hopeful. Humans are different. I've been watching your species for decades now. When you encounter a problem, you don't just analyze it or run from it. You find ways to turn problems into opportunities. When you face the impossible, you make it possible. She gestured to the cookie in his hand. Right now, you're holding something that should not exist according to human science. But instead of rejecting it, you're trying to understand it. Instead of fear, you chose curiosity. Instead of suspicion, you chose trust. Jiho looked down at the cookie, then back at Nala. So what happens now? Now, Nala said with a smile that held both joy and deep sadness, I must decide whether humanity is ready for the greatest gift and the greatest burden the galaxy has ever known. Nala's expression darkened as she moved her hands across the crystal structure. The swirling lights within began to coalesce into clearer images, and Jiho found himself looking at what appeared to be a thriving alien city. Tall spires reached toward purple skies, and beings with gossamer wings flew between floating platforms covered in lush gardens. The Velkari were artists and philosophers, Nala said softly. They created beauty that could make stars weep. Their music could heal broken hearts, and their poetry captured the very essence of joy. She touched the crystal again, and the image shifted to show the same beings huddled in dark corners, their wings torn and eyes empty. I gave them knowledge of what lies in the deep spaces between galaxies. Within 50 years they had all taken their own lives. Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. What did you show them? The truth about how small we all are, how brief our civilizations burn compared to the vast emptiness that surrounds us. They learned that their entire galaxy was just a tiny speck in an ocean of darkness, and that everything they had ever created would one day be forgotten. Nala's voice carried the weight of centuries of regret. They could not bear the knowledge that nothing they did would matter in the cosmic scale of time. The image changed again, showing a different world with massive crystal cities that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. The Zephyrians were builders and engineers. They could reshape entire planets, move moons to create perfect orbits. They thought themselves masters of the universe. What happened to them? I shared knowledge of the Devourers, ancient entities that consume entire star systems for sustenance. The Zephyrians became obsessed with building defenses, creating weapons, preparing for threats that might not reach them for millions of years. The crystal showed the same cities now turned into dark fortresses, surrounded by weapons of unimaginable destruction. They spent so many resources on preparation for distant threats that they forgot to live. Their children were born into bunkers and knew only fear. Eventually they turned their weapons on each other, convinced that their neighbors were secretly working with the enemy. Jiho watched in horror as city after city fell to civil war. How many civilizations have you seen destroy themselves? Hundreds, Nala whispered. Each time I thought I had learned from the previous mistakes. I would share less knowledge, reveal dangers more gradually. But the pattern remained the same. Species either became paralyzed by the vastness of cosmic threats, or they became so focused on survival that they lost what made them worth saving. She showed him more images. A race of peaceful traders who became ruthless conquerors after learning about galactic competition, scientists who went mad trying to comprehend technologies beyond their understanding, philosophers who fell into despair when they realized how many questions would never have answers. But surely some succeeded, Jiho asked, though his voice lacked conviction. 3, Nala said simply. In 3,000 years of searching, only 3 species managed to accept the knowledge without destroying themselves. 2 of them transcended physical existence entirely and moved beyond our reality. The third, she paused, her expression growing sad. The third chose to forget everything they had learned and return to their pre-spaceflight civilization. Jiho stared at the crystal, watching the rise and fall of civilizations play out like a cosmic tragedy. Then why keep trying? Why risk destroying more species? Nala looked at him with ancient, tired eyes. Because the alternative is worse. The archive must be preserved. Someone must carry the torch of knowledge forward, or everything these civilizations discovered dies with me. The question is not whether to share the knowledge, but whether humanity has what it takes to bear its weight without breaking. The crystal's light dimmed, and Nala sat back down, suddenly looking every bit as ancient as her years. There comes a moment in every civilization's journey when they must choose their path forward. Your species has reached that moment, Jiho. Kim, what do you mean? Jiho asked, though part of him already suspected the answer would change everything. Right now, humanity believes it understands the universe reasonably well. You have your physics, your theories about how things work. You're confident in your place as an emerging galactic power. Nala's voice grew serious. But you're standing at the edge of a cliff you don't even know exists. She gestured to the crystal, and new images began to form, not of alien civilizations. This time, but of human cities, human ships, human faces he recognized from news broadcasts back on Earth. Every species that reaches the stars faces the same choice. They can remain comfortable in their limited understanding, staying safe but small, or they can seek the deeper truths of existence, knowing that such knowledge comes with terrible risks. Jiho watched images of Earth's major cities flickering in the crystal. What happens if we choose to stay ignorant? Look closely, Nala said, manipulating the display. The images of human civilization began to slow down, becoming static and repetitive. Species that choose safety eventually stop growing. They become comfortable with their small corner of the galaxy. They stop asking the big questions because they're afraid of the answers. The crystal showed human colonies spread across maybe a dozen star systems, their technology unchanged for centuries. People lived pleasant, peaceful lives, but there was something hollow about the images, like watching a movie played on repeat. They don't suffer, Nala continued, but they don't truly live either. Eventually, younger, more ambitious species surpass them, not through conquest, but simply by growing beyond what the stagnant civilizations could imagine. They become living, museums preserved but irrelevant. And if we choose knowledge, the images shifted dramatically. Human ships now traveled between distant galaxies. Human scientists worked alongside beings of pure energy. Human artists created wonders that defied physical laws. But the faces in these visions carried a weight that hadn't been there before, a deep understanding that came with its own burden. Growth brings power, but power brings responsibility. Knowledge of how to reshape reality comes with knowledge of what could destroy it. Understanding the universe's true nature means confronting truths that most minds cannot bear. Jiho studied the contrasting visions. You're asking me to choose for all of humanity. No, Nala said firmly. I'm asking you to help me understand what choice humanity would make. You see, I've been watching your species for decades, and I've seen something remarkable. When humans face impossible odds, you don't give up or become paralyzed. You find new ways to win. She stood and walked to a window that looked out over the alien landscape. When your planet faced global warming, you didn't just accept extinction. You developed new technologies. When diseases threatened to wipe out millions, you created medicines that seemed impossible just years before. When wars could have destroyed your civilization, you found ways to make peace. Turning back to face him, her eyes held a mixture of hope and fear. But this choice is different. This isn't about solving a problem you can see and understand. This is about accepting knowledge that could either elevate your species to unimaginable heights or destroy everything you hold dear. What exactly are you offering? Fragments, Nala said carefully. Small pieces of the archive, technologies. That could revolutionize your medicine, your energy production, your understanding of consciousness itself. But each gift comes with context, knowledge of the dangers that made such technologies necessary. Jiho felt the weight of Nala's words settling on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. So you're offering us advanced technology in exchange for... What exactly? Nala's expression grew even more serious, and she walked back to the crystal archive. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns, and the swirling lights reorganized themselves into what looked like a vast family tree, countless branches representing different species, most of them ending abruptly. The fragments are not payment, Jiho Kim. They are tools. What I'm truly offering is far more significant. She paused, her ancient eyes meeting his. I'm asking humanity to become the next keepers of the archive. Keepers? Someone must preserve the knowledge when civilizations fall. Someone must watch over the wisdom of ages, protecting it from being lost forever. Nala's voice carried the exhaustion of millennia. For 3,000 years, I have been alone in this duty. I am dying, slowly but certainly. My people's time has passed, and I am the last. Jiho stared at the family tree of civilizations, noticing how many branches had withered and died. You want us to take over when you're gone? It's more complicated than that. Nala manipulated the display again, showing him images of herself. Throughout the centuries, always alone, always watching from the shadows as species rose and fell. Being a keeper means accepting that you will outlive almost everyone you meet. The knowledge within the archive extends life far beyond natural limits, but it cannot extend the life of entire civilizations. She showed him a memory, herself, standing on a mountaintop, watching as a beautiful city below slowly crumbled over decades. The Alterans were artists who painted with light itself. I spent 200 years living among them, learning their ways, sharing carefully chosen pieces of knowledge. I watched their children grow up, helped them through plagues and wars, celebrated their greatest achievements. What happened to them? What happens to all species eventually? They grew old as a civilization. Their creativity dried up, their curiosity faded, and they chose comfort over growth. Within a few generations, they had forgotten how to create the light paintings that once made their world famous. I preserved their art in the archive, but the living tradition died with them. Jiho saw tears forming in Nala's large eyes. That must have been heartbreaking. It was, and it was just one of hundreds of such losses. She showed him more memories, herself holding the hand of a dying alien scientist, watching the last starship of a once mighty empire drift powerlessly through space, standing in empty libraries where great works of philosophy had once been written. Our keeper must love deeply enough to care about preserving each civilization's legacy, but remain detached enough to function when they inevitably disappear. How do you bear it? Jiho asked quietly. By remembering that preservation is not the same as prevention. I cannot save every species from their choices, but I can ensure their wisdom survives to help others. Every time I share knowledge that helps a young civilization solve a crisis, every time their discoveries add new branches to the archive, every time someone like you shows me that hope still exists in the universe, those moments make the loneliness bearable. Nala turned back to him, her expression both pleading and determined. Humanity would not face this burden alone. You would have each other, and you would have the knowledge of ages to guide you. But you must understand, choosing to become keepers means accepting that you will watch civilizations you care about make choices that lead to their destruction, and you cannot interfere. You can only preserve what they leave behind and hope. The next species learns from their mistakes. Jiho looked down at the half-eaten cookie still in his hand, its familiar taste now carrying an entirely different meaning. You've been doing this for 3,000 years, testing people with cookies. Nala smiled, but there was deep sadness behind her eyes. Not just cookies, child. Different foods for different species. The Zephyrians I tested with crystallized energy formations that reminded them of their birthing ceremonies. The Velkari received flower arrangements that sang their childhood lullabies. She gestured to the simple cookie in his palm. But the principle is always the same. I create something that should be impossible, a bridge between their world and mine, between the familiar and the unknown. Then I watch how they react. What exactly are you looking for? The same thing I found in you today. Nala moved to her kitchen counter, where the ingredients for the cookies still lay scattered. Look at these elements again, Jiho. Purple flower that comes from singing plants, crystal eggs that hold the light of 3 moons, star fragments that shouldn't exist in any normal kitchen. Jiho studied the alien ingredients with new understanding. They're completely different from anything on Earth. Exactly. Yet when combined, with intention, with care, with love for someone far from home, They become something that feeds not just the body, but the soul. Nala picked up a handful of the purple flower, letting it slip through her fingers. This is what being a keeper truly means, taking disparate, seemingly incompatible elements and finding ways to combine them into something that nurtures hope. She began cleaning up her workspace, her movements slow and thoughtful. Every civilization I've encountered has faced the same cosmic horror you're beginning to glimpse, the vast emptiness between stars, the knowledge that their entire existence is just a brief flicker in an infinite darkness. The realization that eventually, even their greatest achievements will be forgotten. How do you deal with that knowledge without going insane? The same way you make cookies from impossible ingredients. Nala's voice grew warmer. You focus on the act of creation rather than the certainty of destruction. You find small moments of connection, of joy, of meaning, and you hold on to them like lifelines. She pulled out a worn journal, its pages filled with writing in dozens of different scripts. For 3,000 years, I've recorded every interaction, every test, every species I've encountered. Most of them failed, not because they lacked intelligence or courage, but because they couldn't find hope in hopeless situations. Jiho flipped through the pages, seeing sketches of creatures he couldn't even imagine, notes about their cultures, their foods, their dreams. What made them fail? They became paralyzed by the scale of cosmic suffering. When they learned about civilizations dying in distant galaxies, about species going extinct before anyone could save them, about the heat death of the universe itself, they lost the ability to care about the small immediate things that make life worth living. Nala took the journal back gently. But humans are different. I've watched your species face global disasters, personal tragedies, seemingly impossible challenges, and somehow you keep finding reasons to laugh, to love, to create beautiful things even when everything seems hopeless. You really think we're that special? I think you understand something most species never learn. Nala looked directly into his eyes. The recipe for hope isn't complicated. It doesn't require cosmic significance or universal purpose. It just requires the willingness to combine whatever ingredients you have, even impossible ones, into something that brings comfort to another soul. She gestured to the cookie in his hand one final time. This cookie exists because I refuse to let the loneliness of 3,000 years stop me from reaching out to yet another traveler. That's the real test, Jiho Kim. Not whether you can handle cosmic truth, but whether you can still make cookies for strangers, even after you've seen civilizations crumble to dust. Nala walked to a small wooden box sitting on her kitchen counter, something so ordinary that Jiho hadn't even noticed it among all the alien wonders around him. She opened it carefully, revealing a crystal no larger than his thumb, glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed like a gentle heartbeat. "This is for you," she said simply, placing the crystal in his palm. Jiho stared at the small object, feeling a strange warmth spreading through his fingers. "What is it?" "Your species' graduation gift." Nala's eyes twinkled with something that looked almost like pride. Inside that crystal is the complete blueprint for instantaneous communication across any distance. With this technology, someone on Earth could have a real-time conversation with someone in the Andromeda galaxy. The implications hit Jiho like a physical blow. That would change everything. Our entire understanding of physics says faster-than-light communication is impossible. Your current understanding, yes, but the universe has many layers, and your scientists have only discovered a few of them. Nala sat down across from him again. This technology will allow humanity to truly begin its role as keepers. You cannot preserve and share knowledge across the galaxy if you can only communicate at the speed of light. Jiho turned the crystal over in his hands, hardly believing something so small could contain such revolutionary technology. "Why are you giving this to me? I'm just a xenobiologist. I study alien plants and bacteria. I'm not a physicist or an engineer." "Exactly." Nala's smile grew wider. "You're not someone who thinks they already know how the universe works. You're someone who gets excited about discovering new forms of life, new ways that biology can surprise you. That's the mindset humanity will need as keepers." "But surely there are more qualified people." "Jiho Kim," Nala interrupted gently, "do you know why I chose you specifically for this test?" He shook his head, still staring at the crystal. It wasn't because of your scientific credentials or your position on the diplomatic mission. It was because of what you did 3 hours ago when a strange old alien invited you to her home. Jiho looked up, confused. What I did? You said yes. Nala's voice grew soft with emotion. Despite protocol warnings, despite the fact that I was a complete stranger, despite having no idea what I might want from you, you accepted my invitation with genuine warmth. You didn't calculate the risks or analyze my motives. You simply recognized an act of hospitality and responded with gratitude. The weight of her words settled over him slowly. That was the test? That was everything. Nala leaned forward, her ancient eyes bright with unshed tears. I have offered this same invitation to representatives from 47 different species over the past 3,000 years. Do you know how many accepted? How many? 4, including you. She wiped at her eyes with one delicate hand. The others all found reasons to decline. Security concerns, dietary restrictions, cultural protocols, fear of diplomatic incidents. All perfectly logical reasons to refuse a stranger's offer of cookies and conversation. Jiho felt something shift in his understanding. But we passed the test just by being polite, by being human. Nala's voice carried a note of wonder, as if she still couldn't quite believe it herself. Your species has managed to reach the stars while maintaining something precious that most civilizations lose along the way, the simple ability to trust in the kindness of strangers. She gestured to the crystal in his hand. Advanced technology, cosmic knowledge, the secrets of the universe. None of that matters if you lose the capacity for basic human connection. A keeper who cannot sit down for cookies with a lonely old alien cannot hope to preserve the intimate personal moments that make civilizations worth remembering. The communication device on Jiho's belt crackled to life, breaking the peaceful silence of Nala's kitchen. Kim, report to the shuttle immediately. We're departing in 20 minutes. Captain Lee's voice carried the brisk efficiency of someone who ran everything by schedule. Jiho looked down at the crystal in his palm, then back at Nala, who was carefully wrapping the remaining cookies in a cloth bundle. So I should go, he said, though every fiber of his being wanted to stay and learn more. Of course you should. Nala handed him the bundle with a gentle smile. Your people are waiting, and they'll be hungry for the journey home. As Jiho stood to leave, the full weight of what had just happened hit him. He was carrying technology that could revolutionize human civilization, knowledge that would change everything his species thought they knew about the universe. Yet somehow, the most important part of this encounter had nothing to do with advanced technology or cosmic secrets. Nala, he said, pausing at her doorway, what happens now? How do I explain this to my crew? To Earth? The same way I explained it to you. Her eyes held that familiar twinkle of mischief. Start with the cookies. Share them with your crewmates. Let them taste the impossible. And when they ask how such a thing could exist, tell them the story of an old alien who believes in the power of simple kindness. Jiho tucked the crystal safely into his jacket pocket and held the cookie bundle close to his chest. Will I see you again? Perhaps. Or perhaps you'll meet another keeper, one your species will train and guide. Nala walked him to her garden gate, moving slowly but with obvious contentment. The beautiful thing about what happened today, Jiho Kim, is that it was never really about me, or even about you. It was about proving that connections between strangers are still possible in this vast, often frightening universe. As they reached the gate, Jiho turned back one last time. How do you know we won't make the same mistakes as all those other civilizations? How do you know we won't destroy ourselves with the knowledge? Nala looked up at the twin suns setting. Over her small world, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded Jiho of Earth sunsets. Because 3 hours ago, a human stranger accepted an invitation to share cookies with an alien grandmother. Because you didn't analyze the risk or calculate the benefit, you simply said yes to an act of kindness. She reached out and patted his arm gently with one of her 6 hands. The species that destroy themselves with cosmic knowledge are the ones who forget that the universe, despite all its darkness and vastness, is still made up of individual moments of connection. They lose sight of the fact that caring for one lonely traveler is just as important as preserving the wisdom of ages. Walking back toward his shuttle, Jiho could see his crewmates through the windows, tired from their long day of diplomatic meetings. Soon he would share Nala's cookies with them, and they would taste the impossible. Some would demand scientific explanations, others would worry about security implications, but eventually, someone would simply smile and say, "These taste like home." That person, Jiho realized, would understand what it truly meant to be a keeper. Not someone who hoarded cosmic secrets or wielded advanced technologies, but someone who recognized that the most profound truths could be shared over a simple meal between friends. The recipe for hope really was surprisingly simple. Take whatever ingredients you have. Add genuine care for another's well-being and create something that brings comfort to a traveler far from home. Everything else, the technology, the knowledge, the responsibility of watching over civilizations, was just seasoning for that basic truth. As the aurora lifted off into the star-filled darkness, Jiho smiled, knowing that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning.